Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor gives you sports betting tips. This is Friday, May 24th, Major League Baseball. Apologies for no Thursday show. I tweeted this out so you can remind if you're looking for updates on things like this. Twitter's the place, but you don't have to have an account. You can still go to twitter.com/Professor Sides and see an extra free break over there and some updates, stuff like that. But so we've had a lot happening with the little one. We don't really know anything yet. If there was information to pass along, I would. But we ended up with a couple more appointments Wednesday, a couple of them, one of them longer. And it just kind of going from place to place, getting diagnostic tests done, everything, trying to figure out, he's mostly fine. He's just not gaining a lot of weight. And he's 5 months old, and he's still like a large newborn at this point. He's actually, I was looking at this, the same weight that our daughter was when she was 2 months old. And so, he was a preemie. And so that's a little bit to be expected. But that's, kind of just wiped me out on Thursday. And on top of that, there weren't a lot of games when I would have recorded the show. There weren't a lot of lines out. And then even at that time, there wasn't a lot of value. Got a lot more of the value here in the morning. So, all that is available over on Dub Club. All the picks, all the updates, that never gets a day off. Sometimes the show is just a little bit harder to make it happen. But again, we're always over there on Dub Club. Recap here of Tuesday and Wednesday, since I wasn't able to do this here yesterday. The play of the day, looking good today, right now here, as of this recording on Thursday, which will get us back into the positive for the play of the day after, again, just a terrible couple of weeks early on. It has just been rocking and rolling, doing fantastic. Loving the play of the day there. Again, if you want just the play of the day package, you can get that for a discounted price over on Dub Club. The full package gets you everything you need, including the parlay of the day. Couple tough losses there, but still hanging on to slight positivity. And then, of course, all the A grades so far. Again, slight positivity. So, again, just trying to build off that. Really pleased with where things are here. Again, since May 6th, and I mentioned this in the last show, not arbitrary. The day before, we made a lot of money. So this isn't an arbitrary end date. It's when the grade structure changed. And again, I like this going forward. I think it's more simplistic here. The best the model can give out is B. The model gives out B, C, and D grades. And then anything I like can go from a B to an A. So I've got to give it that stamp of approval. And so I think that makes it cleaner and simpler from what we were doing before. And so again, that's why it's since then. It's also kind of a more recent look now, as that's almost 3 weeks of data now. Total's doing really well. Sides, just barely negative, but I mean, we're 1 day away from that getting positive as well. So again, pleased with where everything is. And if you're looking for more of that, Dub Club is the place to be. That QR code or the link in the show description will get you signed up. Again, Discord chat, that's where you can chat with me, ask me questions, all sorts of benefits over there, including some of the information that I'll show for one of the games here later on in the show. If you're looking for more information to be a smarter, better, if you're nothing else, if you're being entertained by the show, consider signing up even for just the play of the day. It gives you one more play, and your support is greatly appreciated. This is what I do the first thing I wake up throughout the day and before I go to bed, unless it is dealing with kids. This is my whole life here. And so this helps me pay for the groceries because this is my job. So if you're being entertained, we really appreciate your support. Check out Dub Club today. If nothing else, if you can hit that like button, that would help us out a lot. So please do that. Otherwise, though, again, some quick reminders before we get to it. Pickswiththeprofessor.com/new. That's where you'll get some information about the model, the community, rules. The weather is subject to change. We are 24 hours away, more than 24 hours away, slightly from all of these games. That could change things. Updates obviously come in the morning on Dub Club. We are projecting an average game, one game. Who the heck knows what's going to happen in any one game? And so we are talking about an average. So don't come back and say, you said this team was more likely to win. Well, yeah, more likely doesn't mean anything with one game. What it does mean is in the long run, 20 games, 50 games, 100 games, if we have a good model, which we've shown historically here with Sideline being a pretty good model that allows us to know what prices to take in order to be profitable, makes anything a good bet. If the price is right, doesn't mean you'll ever see that price, but knowing what that is helpful. And that's what we're going to outline here throughout the show. We're going to give you the model B grade threshold, the threshold where the model is saying, hey, you should really be looking at this. This is a good price. Doesn't mean you should take it. Just means look into it, kind of know what your goal is in a situation where you may say, I know the goal is that, but it's still 5 cents away. I still like it. I think I'm going to pull the trigger, but can really help us when we're 20 cents, 30 cents away to kind of tell us, yeah, it's just not a good price. And that might make it a long-term, not profitable pick. So that's what we talk about here, along with, again, one play that I really like, all the other ones over on Dub Club. But if you listen hard enough, you'll kind of figure out a lot of what I like anyway. But as always, of course, take what you like and leave the rest. No day games on Friday, unfortunately. We're going to start off the show. Hang with me here, folks. 3 of the first 4 games don't have lines as of right now. So we're going to have a little bit of a can't say too much here early on, but everything else does. So hang with me here early on. The Braves have not confirmed a starting pitcher. This would be Ronaldo Lopez's turn in the rotation, but because of the doubleheader, that creates a situation where you need 6 starting pitchers. So we don't really know what they're going to do because his normal rest puts him on Saturday. They would not put him on short rest. It would be his turn in the rotation in that, you pitch game 1, but then game 2, unfortunately, wasn't the next day. So they've got Darius Vines on the roster. So far, he hasn't been used. We're in the middle of this game, so I don't know if he'll get used here on Thursday. If he does, that'll change that, of course. So I think that's part of the reason why, they are waiting to announce a starting pitcher, because they know if they need him for a few innings, especially right now, it's a tight game in case he goes extras or whatever, then they'll call someone else up. They may call someone else up anyway. We don't really know what they're going to do here. They got a great start from AJ Smith Shawver, if that's how you say it here today. On Thursday, Vines kind of grades out pretty similarly, a young guy who definitely has some potential. He's pitched twice so far for the Braves. Not great results, just kind of a young guy who, 115 grade for a young guy is just kind of, that's a lot of young guys kind of come up with that sort of rating. It's very rare when you don't. So really nothing much to say. Just kind of a young meh pitcher at this point. Got some upside. He might start seeing that right away. He might not till later. He might not even pitch. We don't know. The Braves offense, of course, really good. The Pirates offense, very questionable. Bailey Falter is the pitcher for them, and his 9 starts does have a 3.53 ERA. It is a lot of smoke and mirrors. The underlying metrics, both FIP and XFIP, are not kind to him at all. I'm not sold on him whatsoever. If I have an opportunity to fade him, whether it's backing the Braves or taking the over, what full game or first 5, I have no problem doing that. Full game, of course, also lends itself to the Braves. Doesn't lend itself quite so much to the over with that Braves bullpen. But again, the Braves should be in position for success, no matter who pitches. My hunch is the price isn't going to be great on the Braves on the road, right? That matters a little bit, not a ton, but a little. We've got them winning this. Again, if it is Vines or someone in that same ballpark of pitcher winning 56% of the time, I'm not, like I said, running to back the Pirates on this one unless you get just an insane price. Model says about 9 for the total. And again, looking at maybe the first 5 over as well. I'd rather play the first 5 over on the full game, but again, just depends on what the numbers are, right? You love to go over a number like 8.5 if that's something that's out there for the full game, knowing that 4-4 gets you to the window. So just some things to consider. We'll have more information on this one, of course, tomorrow on Dub Club. Blue Jays and the Tigers. Weather-wise for this one, and I didn't mention it for the previous game, but pretty similar weather. We're talking for both Detroit and Pittsburgh, which are located, of course, not too far from each other in the grand scheme of things. About 80 degrees to start, mid to low 70s to finish. In both stadiums, you're looking at winds about 5 to 10 miles an hour. Maybe a little bit more out in Pittsburgh, but more in Detroit. And that's going to make this play a little bit pitcher-friendly, not by much. Not like the old days where Detroit was a very pitcher-friendly ballpark until they moved those center field fences in. Alek Manoah and Matt Manning. I'm going to start with Manning because he's the easier, simpler guy to talk about. 4.88 ERA, and we talk about ERA is not necessarily always the best predictive metric. In this case, it does align with the other things. This is what you see is what you get. He's just not a very good pitcher. Alek Manoah, what a story. He probably wasn't as good as his ERA a couple of years ago. The underlying metrics did point to, hey, he's not quite this good. But either way, his underlying metrics were still very good 2 years ago. Just maybe not quite as good, as that ERA was. Had a fantastic season 2 seasons ago. Last year with the pitch clock, he was a little bit overweight. There was talk, and you saw this a little bit as well. Some of the heavier pitchers struggled with that pitch clock, a little bit of a stamina type thing. That kind of makes some sense when you just think about it from a logic standpoint, especially at the start of the season. They might say it's no big deal or whatever because that's what we do as humans. But For the minors, they've been doing with this pitch clock. So if you're a little bit bigger or whatever, you're used to that. You have that stamina. But for these guys who weren't pitching with that, at least here in recent years, you gain a little bit of weight, you're a little bit out of shape. That could affect you. Your heart's racing a bit harder. That's going to have then some effects on how hard you can throw the ball. You're throwing hard on every pitch. We always talk about that. That's just kind of one of the differences in today's games. Every pitch at 100%. Having to go back and do it quickly. Now you're going to start losing your mechanics. There's the theory, of course, that that's some of what happened to him. And last year it was just a disaster. This year, things look back going the right direction. It's a 109 grade, and that is a very high error bar, 109. 3 ERA in his 18 innings. His underlying metrics aren't quite that kind, but they aren't bad either. FIP's a little bit elevated, but a 4.0 in xFIP. And again, only 18 innings, but at least you're starting to see a whole lot better than what we saw last year from him. Getting back towards the pitcher he was 2 years ago. Maybe again, I don't think he'll ever be that good. I think if your expectation is that whatever he had for a while, 190 ERA or something ridiculous, that's not real. But he was a very solid pitcher before. He has that potential to go that direction. I'm not saying he's there. The model's not there yet either. Needs to see more data, but there is some intriguing upside with a guy like Manoah. The Blue Jays bats, as we've seen here recently, they can still score a bunch of runs. They can still disappear. In back-to-back games against the White Sox, they scored either 0 or 1 run. I can't remember which one of them. The next day they scored like 9, right? And I've been saying it all season. I feel like that's 2/3 of the offenses in baseball this year, where I just don't trust them on any given night. They've got some potential, right? And the Blue Jays are just yet another one of those offenses. The biggest thing with the Blue Jays, again, they are still pretty right-handed heavy. They're getting maybe a little bit less right-handed heavy, so their ding against righties isn't quite as much as it was maybe earlier in the season, or maybe of course, in the last couple of years. The Tigers, though, I just don't have a lot of faith in them for whatever reason. 23 and 26 in the season. It's the same record as the Blue Jays. But when you look at who they've played, how they've played, the model, and me just looking at it, I'm just not sure there's a lot there. Obviously, they have one of the best pitchers in Tariq Skubal, who got lit up here a little bit, hit around for the first time maybe all season. On a Wednesday night, they lost that game. They've got some decent starting pitching, but the bullpen's just kind of meh. The offense is just kind of meh. I'm on the Blue Jays here. Current price, -105, -108 is the B grade threshold. I'd play it at -110. I wouldn't stress about it. The model says it should be priced at -120. But I think the extra potential upside here with Alek Manoah makes this a really smart pick. And so I think, as you can see here, I did not change the header on this. So apologies for that. I did not change the header. The official pick is not over. The official pick is Blue Jays -105. But it does, as you're seeing that, give us just a reminder of something to talk about here from the last time we talked, which was on Tuesday, that Twins Nationals game where we had the over 8.5 at even money the day before. And before the game starts, that's at 9.5, and there's juice on the over, and we lost that pick. And that's the sort of thing, though, that happens. We have to continue to stay process-based and not result-based. If our process is good, the results will be there. And things like that indicate that our process is solid. I'm not a huge closing line value guy. If you've been with me any time, you'll know I say that. I think it's good to look at and understand kind of where things are going. Just because you have closing line value doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win. But in a case like this, there's things where you can look at and say, okay, at least we had the right idea. Other people thought the same thing. The market moved along with it. We were ahead of it. We wouldn't have played it over 9.5, but we loved it at 8.5. And just because at that, and here's, I guess, the last thing I want to say about that. We wouldn't have played it at 9.5. We loved it at over 8.5. What does that mean? That means that the only result that could have happened where we look like geniuses is 9. There's going to be a lot of times where the game never gets to 9. It stays 8 or below, or it gets to 10 or above, and then it doesn't matter. And that's just kind of the way it goes, right? And in this case, it never quite got there, despite all the conditions being right for it. It's only going to get to 9. Whatever, 15-ish% of the time, something like that, right? So it's not so much about that one game. It's about if we keep doing that, if we keep getting over 8.5s that are really numbers should be higher and everybody kind of recognizes that later, we're going to win an extra 1 or 2 here and there, and that's going to be the big difference. So it's not going to be, I'm not trying to make too big of a deal about the closing line value thing because I think it gets overplayed. I think it could become a little bit cliche here. But again, that sort of thing, that's the process that we're here. Stick with it. It'll come through. Doesn't necessarily mean it'll work every single day. But again, we're going to try the same thing with the Blue Jays, minus 105. I think it should be higher. I wouldn't be surprised if the Blue Jays take a little bit of steam. Their offense is maybe getting things together, or at least relative to the Tigers, not really worse. And as people kind of start looking into the underlying metrics and realizing that Manoah's the better pitcher, I wouldn't be surprised if this gets up to minus 110, minus 115, and towards that minus 120, making minus 105. Again, a pretty smart investment. All about the price. This is a really good price here for the Blue Jays. Mariners and the Nats, mid 70s in Washington to start off. Around Washington, D.C., I guess, not state, since one comes from Washington State, one Washington, D.C., around 70 degrees to close, slight breeze out, going to play a little hitter friendly. No confirmed pitcher yet for the Nationals. We are projecting Mackenzie Gore. Doesn't necessarily mean it'll be him. If it is, nothing really to say. Good pitcher, underlying metrics are good, grades getting better, results are there, things are great with him. And if he keeps doing this, his grade's going to continue to get lower and lower, and lower is better for pitchers because it means fewer runs, and that rate ranking is going to continue to get better and better. George Kirby, I said it from the start, his ERA got a little inflated from a bad start. Don't worry about it. His underlying metrics are great. His ERA is coming down. He's fine as well. I mean, both these pitchers, if it does happen to be Gore, really good, like both of them, young guys. The sky's the limit for both of them. And nothing else really to say. Otherwise, though, the Mariners offense is solid. The Nats offense is questionable. We've got the Nats bullpen is better than the Mariners as of right now. The Mariners bullpen, which was once a strength, struggling according to the model. And again, this is a player-based model, so a lot to do with who's in at the exact moment too. So again, just kind of keep that in mind as we go forward if you weren't aware of that. Again, no line for this one yet, but if it is these two pitchers, we have the Mariners winning 55% of the time with a total somewhere between 8.5 and 9. Royals in the race. Last one with no line here, I promise, and then we'll move on. Everything else has lines for us at this time. Seth Lugo and Tyler Alexander. It does look like we have confirmed that it'll be Sean Armstrong opening for the Rays, and we assume it's Tyler Alexander in bulk behind him. I think that news trickled out a little bit later, and that's why there's no line on this yet. If it is Tyler Alexander as the bulk guy for this, though, he's going to be treated as the starter according to the model. Underlying metrics kind of aligned with that 5.17 ERA, not very good. Seth Lugo has been fantastic, and I think I said this last time. He's not as good as that 1.79 ERA. That's not really rocket science. There's very few ever who are as good as that 1.79 ERA, but the underlying metrics are really good on him. And his grade continues to get better and better and better. Now he's up to the 26th best active starting pitcher right now. And if he continues to do this, it's just going to get better. His FIPS in the low threes, xFIPS in the mid threes, having a great season. The guy who's had some really good moments here in the past, and so far doing well. And part of the reason this Royals team is doing so well, and I've mentioned this before, and I'll say it again in case you're newer here, is the starting pitcher. Brady Singer having a resurgent year. Seth Lugo having a great year. Cole Reagans following up his 100 innings from last year, looking great. Alec Marsh being respectable. I'm forgetting whoever the other guys off the top of my head. The starting pitching has been fantastic for the Royals. The bullpen's been kind of up and down. Overall, it's better than it was last year. Last year it was terrible. The offense is kind of the problem, but the starting pitching has really made up for it. And you look at Tampa, and their situation's like the exact opposite. Their bullpen's been terrible. Their starting pitching's been mostly terrible. It's mostly injured at this point, and they're one of the 3 or 4 teams that seems like right now that have an entire rotation on the IL. Their offense is what carried them last year. It's what's supposed to carry them this year. Their offense is healthy now. Again, this is a player-based model, so keep that in the back of your mind here. The Rays offense has not been the 11th best offense this season. They've missed a lot of guys from injury time, and so right now they project as the 11th best going forward. But as I mentioned before, when you talk about these offenses between whatever number 7 and 20, they can have some good nights. They can have some terrible nights too. So the Rays offense projects better than the Royals, but it's not, I don't feel that much better about them. And again, the opposing pitcher matters as well. And the Royals having a big starting pitching edge will nullify that. We've got this as pretty close to a 50-50 game. We'd have the Rays as slight favorites. I'd love to back the Royals here. Seth Lugo's gotten a lot of love. I'm assuming the price isn't going to be great on the Royals, which means I'm assuming we're going to pass. Total, we have it between 7.5 and 8. Again, maybe there's a first 5 market, maybe there's a full game market. All of this available on Dub Club. That link's in the show description if you're interested in getting more information, more picks, more updates, more everything. Dodgers and the Reds, 7:10 p.m. Eastern. James Paxton and Graham Ashcraft. I don't know. I've talked about this with Paxton. I'm just not a fan of James Paxton this year. We talk about the big, tall lefties, right? Chris Sale, I'm insanely high on. He's been incredibly good. one of the top pitchers in baseball at this point. It's like he is completely, legitimately back. I'm like all in. Like I want to buy all the Chris Sale stock. James Paxton on the opposite end of the spectrum, 2.84 ERA, but a FIP and an xFIP in the fives. It's just a matter of time. On a night like this in Cincinnati, 80 degrees to start, ball might be flying out of that small ballpark. Now, the benefit for him, he's facing a Reds offense that isn't very good. I've been saying that all season long. But at some point or another, the bill's going to come due and Paxton's going to be giving up some runs unless something changes. Maybe he'll figure it out. But at this point, he's been getting really, really lucky. Graham Ashcraft, on the other hand, 4.25 ERA, and that's pretty accurate. Just kind of a ho-hum pitcher. And the biggest thing about the Reds, and I honestly think the Reds and the Royals are pretty similar. I think the Royals bullpen's a little bit better. I think they're pretty similar on offense. I think the biggest difference is the fact that the Reds starting pitching was supposed to carry them and it hasn't. And part of that's been injuries. And the Royals starting pitching has. And that's been the difference between why one team is looking fantastic and the other one is looking pretty terrible. Ashcraft is kind of a guy, maybe more like Alec Marsh, maybe for the Royals. It might be a good comp, not necessarily supposed to be top of the line, but supposed to be a middle of the rotation, solid arm. And Marsh has been pretty good. Ashcraft's been kind of met. And I think that just summarizes these two teams. I'm still not high on the Reds. Obviously, I'm high on the Dodgers offense. I'm not high on Paxton, which makes this interesting. The market's a little bit higher on the Dodgers than I am. That doesn't surprise me because the market, I think, is higher on Paxton than I am. But otherwise, I'm not running to back the Reds in this one. I would love to find a way to fade Paxton. Unfortunately, the total in this game is 9.5. I'd love to go over a 9 without much juice, but unfortunately, the 9.5 is actually juiced to the over. So it doesn't look like there's much opportunity for the full game here. Maybe a first five and market will pop later and provide value. None of those are out yet. But as always, shop around. If you can find those price listed there, that B grade threshold, if you can find a number that deviates enough from the model's projected total, that makes it a pretty smart play according to a model, again, that's been tested for the long run here. If you don't have an account at multiple books, make sure you have at least 3 or 4. If you have more than that, fine. You don't need 20 necessarily. You can. At some point, your ROI gets a little bit limited. But shopping around 3 or 4 different books can make a big difference, saving 10 cents every time you bet, 5 cents every time you bet. Some games you can't save anything. Some games, every book's got the same price. And that's okay. But especially in a sport like baseball, moneyline sport, you're going to be able to save a lot of money by shopping around. And that can turn you from a losing better to a winning better, or from a break-even better to a winning better, or from a winning better to winning even more, right? And that's our goal here, to help you win more money than you're winning right now. If you don't have an account there yet, BetUS is one of the books that should be in your portfolio. Sign up link in the show description. Check them out. They are still offering you 125% bonus on your first ever 3 deposits.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Moving on to the Giants and the Mets. Around 70 degrees for this one. A little bit warmer to start, a little bit cooler to finish. One will be blowing out, which is going to turn what's a very pitcher-friendly ballpark into a still pitcher friendly ballpark, just maybe not quite as much as usual as it can be. And as we enter the summer months, that's how it's going to play. Citi Field will still play pitcher friendly relative to the rest of the league, but maybe not quite as much as the weather gets into more reasonable temperatures, especially not like this with a slight breeze blowing out. Kyle Harrison and Christian Scott. Harrison's been very solid, 3.60 ERA. His underlying metrics have a little bit of concern, and that's really the reason why he's on the north side of 100, where 100 is average again for these grades. Then on the south side, Christian Scott, on the other hand, a young guy, his per inning projection is better than his grade. The biggest reason his grade is a little bit higher is the model's not overly confident that he's going to be able to go deep into the ball game. That puts a little bit more strain on the bullpen, and so that kind of dings his rating just a little bit. But his per inning projection isn't that far above from Kyle Harrison. So the starting pitcher gap, not very large in here. The only thing is that the model thinks the Giants can get an extra inning out of Harrison on average, or close to an inning on average, and that helps a little bit. Both these bullpens are pretty solid, though, so it might not really matter. Both these offenses are pretty similar. These two teams are very ho-hum, kind of run-of-the-mill average in a lot of categories. Both of them are under 500 for the season for various reasons. Both of them a little bit disappointing, while having some solid stretches and having some disappointing stretches. The big talking force of the Mets, Edwin Diaz and his struggles. Some other guys in the bullpen have really been stepping up and helping him out there. But again, really looking at a mirror on this one. Two offenses that again can score but can also really disappear. Two starting pitchers that are both okay. Younger guys may not go overly deep. Two sets of bullpens that are overall pretty solid going forward. We've got this as the Mets winning 54% of the time, which is just slightly more than home field advantage. The market says 55%. The edge here is not strong enough for me to touch for the full game. Again, the first 5 markets aren't out yet, so maybe that'll offer us something. Total projected pretty close. So again, unless the numbers move a lot, we'll be having to look at this in the first 5 market, or else it'll be really hard to find value in that one. Rangers and the Twins, 7:10 p.m. Eastern. A chilly May night in Minnesota. We're talking mid-50s to start, around 50 degrees to finish, maybe even in the upper 40s. And a strong wind. If you're there, this is going to be a chilly night. Bundle up. 15 to 20 mile an hour winds, 25 mile an hour gusts. Winds are blowing out to right center. And so the park's going to play pretty normal because the temperature is going to prevent the ball from flying, but the wind blowing out is going to then offset that. And so we're going to end up with the ball carrying about like usual, like a normal standard ballpark, despite the fact that we've got these two counter forces in effect. Jose Urena for the Rangers. I have no problem backing him. Has been very solid in his 3 starts, pitched a little bit out of the pen, very run-of-the-mill average pitcher. Bailey Ober, ERA a little bit higher, but the underlying metrics are very strong on him. No problem backing him either. Both these offenses right out middle of the pack. Again, player-based model. So the Twins have had a bunch of guys injured this season offensively, getting a little bit more healthy now, and that makes them a top half of the league offense. Bullpen-wise, still like the Twins bullpen better, and they're at home. But the market seems to think that the difference between Ober and Urena, while it exists, Ober's the better pitcher, I would say. The market seems to think that difference is a little bit stronger than I would say it is. I think the gap's not that big. The concern, of course, is that Urena isn't able to go deep. The Rangers have some guys at the back end that are okay, but maybe not a lot of bullpen depth. That's kind of the one concern. That's why the Twins are favored, in my opinion. They should be favored. I'm not sure they should be favored by this much. I'm looking at this as Rangers or pass, whether it's full game or first 5 is kind of the decision you have to make. We'll have an official recommendation for you over on Dub Club. But when you look at it right now, the plus 135 is 3 cents better than the B grade threshold that the model would give. So again, Rangers or pass, whether it's full game, run line, first 5, or whatever. And again, more guidance is available on Dub Club. Brewers and the Red Sox, mid-70s to start, upper 60s to finish. Wind will be blowing a little bit out, a little bit across, about 10 miles an hour. Hitter-friendly ballpark with this sort of weather. If the wind's blowing out, especially to right field, it's always easy to hit the ball to left field because it's either a home run or off the wall. Right field can play a little bit deeper, more to the power rallies. It's kind of where the wind might be going. Again, I want to check back on the weather on this one, but we always have to keep in mind with Fenway, the runs can come in bunches. The variance is very high there with regards to number of runs. Bryce Wilson and Cutter Crawford. Wilson is a 2.79 ERA in his 6 starts. Smoke and mirrors, folks. I'm not convinced it's real. Both his FIP and his xFIP are in the mid to upper 4s. I don't think he's bad. I just don't think he's this good. I think he's going to be actually a slightly subpar pitcher. At minimum, I'm going to say he's going to be more run-of-the-mill average pitcher than so far. So don't look at that ERA and think he's that good. I think Cutter Crawford is by far the better pitcher, 2.17 ERA, and he's probably not quite that good, but his FIP's in the upper 2s, his xFIP's in the 3s, very solid pitcher. Again, probably not quite as good as that ERA, but at least closer to reality on his ERA than Wilson. Offensively, bullpen-wise, both these bullpens are solid at this point with the way they're currently constructed. Biggest difference is Cutter Crawford. We've got the Red Sox winning this 58% of the time. The market says 54% of the time, and we are right on the edge of that B grade threshold for the Red Sox at minus 124 right now. We'd also be looking at a pretty strong over. The market's got it at 8.5 with some juice to the over. We've got it more 9.5 to 10. A couple things. First off, that total is highly subject to change based off the wind being more out or more across. So keep that in mind. The other thing, again, the totals in Fenway can get really variable. And so just, you might end up with a game with 14 runs. You might end up with a game with 3. So we are always looking for larger differences in Fenway, and Coors is the same way. We want larger differentials before we play them than most other parks. But this is Red Sox or pass, over or pass. And that holds for whether it's first 5, full game, run line, whatever you may be looking at. Again, official recommendation for this will come over on Dub Club, but in some way, shape, or form, Red Sox and over would be the directions I would be eyeing. Orioles and the White Sox, mid-60s for the totality of this game. Wind will be blowing across. Might play slightly pitcher-friendly for Corbin Burnes and Chris Flexen. Corbin Burnes has been fantastic for the Orioles, 2.56 ERA. Underlying metrics are maybe slightly higher than that, but I mean, he's looking really good. And in fact, if he continues to pitch like this, he's going to join that top set of pitchers at the top of Sidelines rankings because he's looking, again, very, very good. Nothing bad to say about Corbin Burnes and his performance this year. Chris Flexen, 5.48 ERA. His underlying metrics say he's not that bad, but the model is still not very high on him. He hasn't been good this year. He was worse last year. Maybe he's actually a little bit better than his 128 grade, but folks, it ain't by much. And the problem is behind him, the White Sox set of relievers, not very good. And this Orioles offense is legit. I mean, this is all Orioles. They're massive favorites. They should be massive favorites. The market says they win a nice 69% of the time, but we think they win an even nicer 73% of the time. B-Grid threshold minus 250, you can get minus 240 right now. So Orioles is the way to go, in my opinion, whether it's money line, run line, -1, first 5, whatever it may be. And again, as always, an official recommendation of how I would play this game is available on Dub Club. Cubs and the Cardinals, upper 60s for this one. Maybe a slight breeze blowing in. This is going to turn what's become a kind of hitter-friendly ballpark in St. Louis into much more of a pitcher-friendly ballpark. Monaga for the Cubs. I mean, just what is there left to say about this guy? He continues to pitch really well. Last time out, whatever it was, 7 shutout innings, and his ERA drops like 1/10 of a run or something. He's obviously not as good as that 0.84 ERA. His FIP is 220. His xFIP's in the low 3s. Going the right direction with we already have him. We already have him here. But if he continues to pitch like this, he's going to keep going up. I mean, he's really, really good. There's really nothing more to say than that. Miles Michaelis, on the other hand, not really good. 5.77 ERA on the season. Underlying metrics aren't that bad. His xFIP's at 4.11, which isn't too terrible, but this is a massive starting pitcher discrepancy. The Cardinals offense, well, at one point of the season, we had it a lot higher. I thought they were going to do better. The model's adjusting to how they've done, which has been very bad. And of course, again, it's a player-based model. Losing Contreras, who was probably their best hitter so far on the season, hurts that as well. It's kind of pulled them more towards the middle of the pack. Cubs offensive relievers right now, middle of the pack as well. The Cardinals bullpen is their strength, but can they get there with it even close, given the starting pitcher discrepancy? That's going to be the question. Unfortunately for us, we are in lockstep with the market, saying the Cubs win 55% of the time, and in pretty lockstep on the total as well, thinking upper 7s, maybe close to 8 is about where it should sit. So at least for now, looking at this, no value to be found anywhere. Again, maybe there's a first 5 market that gives us some value. Maybe it's a pass. Again, we'll have more recommendations over on Dub Club. Phillies and the Rockies, 8:40 p.m. Eastern, mid-60s to start, around 60 degrees to close. Wind looking kind of across. Going to play hitter-friendly. It's Coors Field. Maybe not quite as much as normal. Still a very hitter-friendly night, but maybe, again, not quite as extreme because we are not dealing with, daytime temperatures, warm temperatures, no wind blowing out or whatever. So it's not going to play like crazy Coors. And the biggest thing about the Rockies is their offense just isn't very good. Dead last, according to Sideline, their relievers, that number 27 ranking is a little bit deceptive because they are right before it falls off. I don't remember if it falls off at 28 or 29, but like the Angels and the White Sox I know are too. I think the Reds are probably 28. So really the last 3 is where it drops off. The Rockies relievers aren't terrible. They're okay. And they're not good, but the relievers are better than their offenses. Ty Block for the Rockies, 5.14 ERA, has struggled with the results in his 21 innings, but his FIP's 337, his xFIP's 437. That's respectable. That's not great, but it's not terrible. This Phillies offense continues to look better and better and better. I'm not sure the Phillies are ever going to lose again. I mentioned that last show. We have to be careful back in the Phillies because the prices are just getting outrageous, and at some point there's just not good value on them, and so we just want to pass. But I mean, hey, at this point, again, if they're never going to lose, I guess you can bet minus 10,000 on the Phillies, and you're still going to be making money because they're never going to lose again. That's what it feels like with this Phillies team. And of course, I mentioned it before, I love all of their starting pitchers with the exception of Taijuan Walker. If you swap Spencer Turnbull in there, I could say that about them. Model loves their bullpen as well. There's really just not a lot to insult about this Phillies team other than we can't get a good price on them because they're so dang good right now, and everybody seems to know it. I love Christopher Sanchez. I've loved him for a couple of years now. I've been touting him. 3.31 ERA. Folks, his FIP and his xFIP are better than that. If he continues to pitch like this, his grade's going to get even better. A guy I was always high on still has room to get better in the model. He's a guy who in previous, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, I was sitting there saying, this guy should be one of the guys pitching in the playoffs for him, and they were hesitant to use him. And now we're starting to see why I was saying that, which was he's a very good pitcher. I really just can't praise the Phillies enough, and this Rockies team is terrible. Now, of course, note the Rockies do have the best home field advantage in baseball. They stand more of a chance to win at home than anywhere else, or if they're on the road against, the A's or the Reds, I guess, some of your bottom feeders. Again, the Phillies, I think they're priced too high. It's Rockies or pass. At this point, given the Phillies are never going to lose again, maybe we think about passing in that regard. Total is under or pass, given it's in Coors Field. Maybe you pass on it. You got a couple of different ways that you can look at this game. Again, I have an official recommendation of there's one thing that I like on this game, one way that I think you can be profitable right now that I've told everyone on Dub Club already to lock in. But again, you have a Rockies or pass, under or pass, and I get that both of those might be uncomfortable for different reasons. So this is the sort of thing where if you're not part of a community like we have over on Discord, we can chat about this, why we like one more than the other. But again, as always, the price on the Phillies is just too high because they probably will lose again. I'm just not sure when it might come. To the late games, Guardians and the Angels, 9:38 p.m. Eastern. Around 60 degrees for this one. We're going to be blowing out. The wind blowing out and the cooler temperatures are going to kind of offset, make this play like a pretty standard park. A pair of lefties, Logan Allen and Patrick Sandoval. Allen, 4.91 ERA. Underlying metrics maybe a little bit better than that, but not by much. Patrick Sandoval, I love backing him. I love backing pitchers who have inflated ERAs, but the underlying metrics look good. 305 FIP, 368 xFIP. He's not like a Cy Young winner, but he's good. He's a good pitcher. He's better than his ERA. He's the better pitcher between these two. Now, the big problem is look at the discrepancy between those relievers. Offensively, it's about the same. The Guardians offense, again, kind of coming a little bit more back to earth as of late. They've been carried by their bullpen. They've been carried by some of the starting pitching that they've been getting. Offensively, they're not terrible. But as before, that's kind of their big concern. The Angels, of course, without Trout, offensively not very good, but the relievers, folks, the relievers are the big difference. I will say this, as I've said many a time with both of these teams, if you're backing the Guardians, you probably want to do it full game because you want their bullpen involved. We've had a number of games where the Guardians have come back and won late. If you're backing the Angels, you probably want to do it first five, though they've won some games. But you kind of, if they're not winning after five, your odds aren't good. And if they are winning after five, your odds are still a little scary with that bullpen, especially going up against a team like the Guardians who can really shut you out if the game's close. So that's kind of my thought on that one. Total, we're in kind of lockstep. But we're a little bit higher on the Angels than the market. I love backing Patrick Sandoval, but my hunch is this would be more of an Angels first five play than anything else because full game is just so terrifying with the discrepancy of these bullpens. Marlins and Diamondbacks, 9:40 p.m. Eastern. A hot one in Arizona, upper 80s to start, lower 80s to close. I have to assume that this is a game that they are going to be closing their roof on. It looks like they have decided they might open it on Saturday. So we'll see what the weather's like come Saturday. But Friday night here, it looks like closed roof for Braxton Garrett and Zach Gallen. Garrett's only had 2 starts. His ERA is inflated. Underlying metrics look fine on him. I think he's very respectable, solid pitcher. Zach Gallen, 3.02 ERA, and underlying metrics line up right with that. He's having a great season, and the guy who pitches insanely well at home. As I mentioned all season, the biggest problem with the Marlins is their offense. It is terrible. The Diamondbacks offense still grades out fairly well. Their relievers kind of a mixed bag. But anytime you have a big starting pitcher discrepancy like this, you got to think it's Diamondbacks or pass. The model says they win 67% of the time. The market says 64%. I wouldn't mind backing an under in this one if the number was better, if we just had a different spot. Maybe it's a first 5 under opportunity for us because I love backing Zach Gallen unders at home or Zach Gallen at home. And again, Braxton Garrett, I don't think is that bad. I think his ERA is misleading, might be getting a little value there because it's only 2 starts. and one extra set of runs, it kills him. But the underlying metrics are fine. He's been very respectable. And I never expect the Marlins to score many runs anyway. So we're kind of back to where we were last year, where they had that incredible stretch of just not scoring much. So I'd love an under. I don't think the market is giving us a lot of value for that under. Maybe they will for the first 5. But again, Diamondbacks are pass, especially when it's Zach Gallen at home. It's that simple. Astros and the A's, 9:40 p.m. Eastern. Mid-50s in Oakland. Wind blowing out at about 15 miles an hour. It might actually play a little bit more hitter-friendly than usual. I still think it's going to be pitcher-friendly. I still think the pitchers are going to enjoy pitching here. But that wind blowing out, even though it's a cool night, you get the ball up in the air enough, might help you out. Now, of course, note it's out to right field. That's going to help more of your left-handed hitters, so more of your Yordan Alvarez, your Kyle Tuckers, your John Singletons, assuming he's playing. Of course, Singleton's got the type of power. I'm not really sure it matters what the wind's doing. He's like, I hit the ball to the moon. Justin Verlander and Ross Stripling, not a fan of what Stripling has done this season with the 5.19 ERA. The underlying metrics are a little bit more positive than that, though, and that's the hope for him, is that he can get towards that. It hasn't been there yet for him, unfortunately, but I'm still kind of holding out hope that he can get there. His FIP's 390. His xFIP's going to be a little bit higher in that park because you are going to allow less home runs in that park. So in theory, he should be able to have a decent-ish start. The issue is going up against this Astros offense that the model just absolutely loves, especially now that Singleton's in there and looking like he's shored up some of their inconsistencies there, at least at first base. Justin Verlander, on the other hand, folks, I mentioned this previously when he pitched, and many of you know I'm an Astros fan, and I've been to many Astros World Series games at this point. I've been to an Astros game every year of my life. But folks, we talked about this, right? I'm happy to bet on my team or against my team. I bet on them in the World Series in a game I went to, and I bet against them in the World Series in a game I went to that they lost the trophy. So the team celebrate on our home field, right? I'm more loyal to being right and to our money. And I said this about Verlander. I'm an Astros fan, but I'm very realistic, and I was high on Hunter Brown 2 nights ago. And I said, hey, I think he can be okay. I'm a little bit concerned about the walks, but man, I think maybe he'll be fine. Sure enough, he's looking good. I'll say the opposite about Verlander. 3.97 ERA. And so if you look at it with rose-colored glasses, you look at that and you say, hey, he started injured. His ERA is below 4, just another couple good starts. I mean, the low 3s like it normally is. But folks, when age comes, it comes. And I'm just not sure his stuff is there to be an elite major league pitcher. Now, he might still be good enough to pitch in the major leagues and be a back-end guy. But folks, the underlying metrics for him are a concern. And I think that his 100 grade is pretty accurate. And that's crazy because I cannot believe that Justin Verlander is graded out as a league average pitcher. This guy seemed like a cyborg who was going to pitch until he was 55. And he may still do that, but it seemed like he was going to dominate until age 55. And I think that 100 is pretty accurate. I think he's better than Ross Stripling at this point. I still think he's a solid major league pitcher, but when you look at the underlying metrics, I don't think this is the Justin Verlander of old. I don't think it's the guy you can go out there and count on for 7 innings and maybe get you 8. I don't think it's the guy who you can count on to just give up, a solo home run or 2, but a bad start be 6 innings, 2 runs. I think 6 innings, 2 runs is going to be a pretty good start at this point for him. The good news for him, he's got a good offense behind him. The model still likes the relievers. I said it all season. The relievers will be fine. Just give them a chance. And sure enough, they've been pretty good here again this last month as they've been winning more. The big concern with the Astros, and I said it with this Angel series, is every time, as an Astros fan, I've seen this, every time it seems like they've got it figured out, they will go ahead and do something stupid. And that's what they did by losing 2 out of 3 to the Angels. And, both losses, games they should have won. Or at least one they should have won. The other one they could have won. That they just need to do something offensively. So they've struggled at times at Oakland. So don't just be throwing the Astros in every Monday night parlay. I think they're much better than this record. I was happy to fade them earlier in the season. Again, I think we faded them 5 out of 6 or 6 games in a row against Washington and Atlanta. I think we won 5 of them. So I'm happy to fade them if the price is right to fade them. I'm happy to back them because I think there might be some value backing them here. Folks, this isn't one of those games. The market says 61% for the Astros. I've got 61%. If the price deviates, again, I think I really trust them all. The models are great. the Astros here. So I really trust a 61%. I think it's pretty dang spot on. So if the number moves, I'm happy to fade a line movement. Line movement's wrong half the time. So it's not the end all be all, right? And that's why I said at the start of the show, I'm not huge on closing line value. I think it can be a useful tool. I think we can look at it, but it's not everything. So I'm totally happy to fade a line movement here. A lot of times we have the opening numbers are really good. I think this is a really good opening number. I think yesterday's 8.5 wasn't. I think people just forgot to look at the weather, and then they saw the weather the next day. They're like, oh, there might be some runs, right? And sadly there weren't, but the total adjusted appropriately. Anyway, the model says 8.32 runs though. The total market is 7.5. I never love going over 7.5, but it's over or pass, especially because again, I just don't trust Justin Verlander to be the same guy. Now that doesn't mean he won't have a really good start here. So keep that in mind too. He's a 100 grade pitcher, but he still has the potential to every once in a while go out there and have a great game. And against this subpar A's offense, that might happen here. But I also think there might be some value if you're just kind of consistently backing the overs in his game, the first 5 overs in his games, things like that, because I'm not sure the market realizes that he's just kind of an average pitcher at this point, which is, again, kind of just crazy to say. So hopefully a lot of thoughts, hopefully some of that meant something to you. Again, if you have follow-up questions, our Discord chat is the place to ask those. I'd love to answer any of those questions you might have. Wrapping us up, Yankees and Padres around 60 degrees for this one. Wind will be blowing a little bit in, a little bit across. That's going to matter here. It's going to be 10 miles an hour. It's going to play very pitcher-friendly. Don't get me wrong. The only question is how much. And so that's kind of the last thing to wait on here is just how pitcher-friendly it's going to be based off the wind. If the wind's blowing in, there might not be 3 runs in this game because we're entering the time of the year where night games at Petco Park, the ball I've seen balls just crushed, and they'll be like routine fly balls. And if the wind's blowing in, that's what's going to happen here. If the wind's blowing across, it'll still play very pitcher friendly, but maybe not quite as much. And runs can still happen without home runs, right? Walks and singles, stuff like that. It's harder to score runs like that in today's game because every pitch is thrown to 100%. And so to score on singles and walks, you got to have 3 things go right in one inning just to get 1 run. 4 things you might get you 2. 5 might get you 3. But that's a lot of things going right for you in 1 inning. And that's the benefit of the home run ball is that 3 things go right for you in the right order with the home run ball. You can get 3 runs instead of just 1. And so it doesn't mean, bet all your money in the under here, of course, but to me, it's under or pass given the weather. Okay. But do check back and see if the wind is more in or more across for this one, because that's going to could potentially be the icing on the cake. Carlos Rodon and Yu Darvish. Rodon, I'm not sold on the 3.27 ERA. I think it's smoke and mirrors. He wasn't good last year. I think he's going to be better this year. His grades up better this year. I think some of that was injuries. I still am concerned those underlying metrics are a little bit high. My official take on Carlos Rodon is he's good, not great. His ERA so far is great. I'm just not sold on it. The Yankees offense is great. The relievers, again, and we've seen it here a little bit recently, I'm concerned about. The model doesn't like their relievers. I know they have a great ERA. They've been playing in really pitcher-friendly conditions. The biggest thing is their offense been scoring anything in these pitcher-friendly conditions. I think is pretty impressive. They're going to play in more pitcher-friendly conditions here, so they're going to get some good help with the ERAs, but I'm still thinking the relievers of this Yankees team right now, at least, is their weak spot. Their offense is really good. Rodon, again, good, not great. For the Padres offense, a little bit step back, but Yu Darvish looks pretty good, 2.08 ERA, and while his underlying metrics say he's not that good, I'm not really breaking news there. It's very positive on this. There's a real chance that Yu Darvish is the better pitcher here, and if he continues to pitch like this, his grade should be more like an 85 than a 95. So I really like what they've got there. Don't really trust the Padres relievers either. And so that's kind of the difference between whether you're looking more full game under or first 5 under is exactly what number you can get and exactly what the first 5 number is specifically, because under 7 is a little bit less exciting. Under 7.5, as long as you're not paying too much juice, can make a lot of sense. Maybe the first 5 under, but I wouldn't want to go under 3 unless it was, big plus odds and or the wind was blowing in. So, a couple of things to consider there. Again, I'll have an official recommendation on this over on Dub Club, but with regards to the side, I don't think there's much value. We've got it 50-50. The market leans to the Yankees. I'm not sure if that's right, to be honest. I would kind of lean a little bit more to the Padres personally, just because I'm higher on Darvish than I am Rodon. But again, the Yankees offense is really good, and the Yankees team is really good. So it's hard to, too forcefully go against that. I just think the Padres might have a little bit of an edge at home with the slightly better starting pitcher. But again, it's priced so close to 50-50 that it's under or pass in some way, shape, or form. And again, link in the show description. First link to Dub Club will get you that information if you are interested in it. We appreciate your support. If you're over on Dub Club, if you're not yet, check it out. See if you like it. We have, according to the people on Dub Club, the best retention of anybody there who has more than like 5 subscribers, because we give out a ton of information. People love what we have to offer over there. So check it out if you haven't yet. Try to make it worth your money. If not, though, again, we do appreciate you watching. Hit that like button if you haven't yet already. Appreciate that a bunch. As always, best of luck. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.